Speaking of strong women, Dana Loesch is here. She's out with a new book. She's a very strong, accomplished woman. She's probably best known for being a nationally syndicated talk show host. There are too many women in radio these days, so we try to stick together. She's also a mother, a wife, and she's here to talk about her brand new book, and it's called Hands Off My Gun. Please welcome to the stage Dana Loesch.
Good afternoon. It's good to see you all here. I didn't want a podium because I'm done with them. I wanted a stool because I thought, you know, be a girlfriend chat. We'll just pull up a seat and we'll have a chat, right? A lot of stuff going on in the world today. So as you heard, I have a book out, and I really never realized how arduous the book writing process was until I started it. Hands Off My Gun. You can go and get it. I'm going to be signing books after this. I think it's from 2 to 3 o'clock. And you can also go to danaradio.com and you can see where I'll be at next. And if you want to order some more, which is always good, please go and do so. So this past week, I've been, in addition to my 3 hours broadcast every single day, Monday through Friday, I also have my show with The Blaze, which is 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central. And we recently relocated from St. Louis. I'm going to put this stool back so I can see you better. We recently relocated from St. Louis to Dallas. Now, we lived in downtown St. Louis, and I could see the arch from my backyard. And I always thought that I loved this city, and look, I love my hometown, and I love the state of Missouri because we say things like farty far, highway farty far, and we eat Emo's Pizza, and you're born to love the Cardinals, and if you don't, they make you leave. Which they do, kind of. But we have God's baseball team, I'll be honest. That's what, somebody clapped, yes. But no, we moved to Dallas, and I love it so much. I love it for a number of reasons, least of which, though, are their gun laws, which is insane when you think that Vermont has better gun laws than Texas. So they say don't mess with Texas, but what they're saying is don't mess with Texas unless you're messing with Texas with ICE or gun laws, because those two things totally get us every single time. So I've been traveling this entire week. I was in New York. I'm going to be going to Atlanta and Orlando coming up, and Indianapolis, and a bunch of different places, DC. And it's been, one of the highlights of my week was meeting Gene Simmons in the lobby of Fox, which was very odd. He's like 7 feet tall, very cool. But yesterday was a really rough day because of the news cycle. And it's always hard because when I'm on air, you know, I'm opinion radio. I mean, I don't lie about it. I'm totally biased towards the Constitution. I am a total constitutional partisan hack. And whenever we have a breaking news story like what we had with the situation with the terrorist attack in Canada, not workplace violence, not workplace dispute, it's a terror attack. Whenever we have something like that, or whenever we had the horrible shooting that took place in Washington at that high school, it's always hard because then I have to go from being opinion talk to then also providing the news on this. And as a parent, this is the second school shooting that took place when I was on air. The first of which was Sandy Hook, and I was live on air as that happened and trying to give updates to all of our markets, and it was really hard because as a mother, I look, and you know how it is if you're parents, you see your child in every child, and so it's balancing that emotional response with, I have a responsibility right now behind the mic. So it was really difficult, and yesterday was no exception. And as it happened, and as we always, again, we see the images of the students being led out of the school, we learned more about the assailant. We learned more about this 14-year-old. And before we even knew all of the details, I started seeing stuff on social media. People from the likes of Michael Bloomberg from New York. People from the likes of Moms Demand Action, but not in a pornographic way, located in Indianapolis. I did say that out loud. I meant to. So they immediately decided to try to politicize this before we even knew the condition of those who had been shot. And I began to see things of the nature, well, if only we didn't have any guns in this country, we wouldn't have things like this that happened. If only we had background checks. We need background checks. People cannot have assault rifles, because I didn't realize a .40 caliber pistol was an assault rifle, but there it is. All of this stuff began filling up in social media. And then, of course, because my book came out this week, which some people said, well, does that make it awkward? And I say no, and I'll explain why in a minute. People started attacking the book cover. On my book, I posed with my AR-15. And I actually went back and forth with my publisher. They wanted me to sit there on the chair with my Glock 19, and I said, no, I'm not sitting with my pistol. I'm going to sit with an AR-15. I'm going to stand with my AR-15. It is the most hated, misunderstood rifle in the United States of America, and just because, it has some cosmetic features to it, and it's black, you think it's shooty-er or salty-er? Doesn't make any sense to me. Quit being a bigot. Quit gun shaming. So, well, we can. They have slut shaming. They have gun shaming. So this, they started going after the book. They started going after the cover of the book, saying that basically I was culpable in what happened. And this happens every single time that there is an incident of this, which are rare, by the way, contrary to the reports which have been released. It's rare. And then Piers Morgan got involved. When he isn't photoshopping pictures of soldiers at Abu Ghraib, he's arguing with mothers online about firearms and gun safety, because he, as a Brit, is an expert on American gun law. I don't know if you all knew that. He's the go-to legal expert where it comes to gun law in the United States. And my first response, just like my response is every single time I see something like this, is why are certain questions not being asked? Were you all aware that this 14-year-old, his name was Jalen Freiberg, he was on Twitter. He was on Instagram. He's 14 years old. My oldest son is 13. Apparently, his parents were unaware of what he was posting on his social media accounts, because for months and months and months, it was nothing but sex and violence on Twitter, on Instagram. Apparently, his Facebook page was the same. He was vulgar, he objectified women, and he was absolutely obsessed with violence. Now, tell me how his parents, where were his parents? How do you not know what your child is doing online? Your 14-year-old child is issuing cry for help after cry for help. How are you, as a parent, unaware of this? My 13-year-old doesn't have a Twitter account or Instagram or Facebook, and I monitor every single thing that he does online, not because I'm a control freak, but because I'm a good parent. My second question, after where were the parents when he had these public cries for help, these were not protected accounts, was how does a 14-year-old get a handgun? You cannot legally purchase a handgun being 14 years old, and there is no legitimate, any shop owner, any FFL shop owner that is going to sell one for fear of losing a license, because it's next to impossible to get it back once lost, and there are seriously heavy fines and penalties that go along with that. So then the next logical thought is, well, he stole it. He used it, he took his dad's .40 caliber pistol, took it in his backpack to school, sat in the school cafeteria, and emotionless, pulled the handgun out of his backpack and popped off at 5 students, killing 1, before he turned his gun on himself after reloading. How did he get that? How did he have access to that? He took it from his parents. So you're telling me his parents are ignoring the cries for help, and this kid goes and gets his dad's gun and takes it to school, and his parents have no idea? I'm going to tell you what, in my house, we have a number of safes. I have the standard lock, I have RFID, radio frequency, and we have biometric. I'm able to access anything I need in less than a second. I have loaded guns strategically placed all over my house. You cannot get into my firearms without an alarm going off. And I don't sacrifice my accessibility either. But again, it's because I'm a good parent. There's a difference. This wasn't a failure what happened in Washington, of gun laws. This was a failure of bad parenting, and I'll be damned if I have the finger of anti-gun groups pointing at me, accusing me of being culpable, when if I was the parent in this situation, that kid would have been in a mental health institution, and he would not have been given a firearm as a birthday present 2 months ago. These are the facts, and these are the questions that should be asked. Why is it that whenever anything like this happens, the first reaction is for people to try to deprive the law-abiding of their rights? It is always the first reaction. Firearms, 60 times moreover, are used every year for instances of self-defense as opposed to for criminal purposes. And I get into all of this in my book. And it's unfortunate that in pushing an agenda, we are creating more victims. I'm going to share with you a story, and I've talked about it a little bit this week. Because I was raised in rural Missouri. I was raised in the Ozarks. That's where my family's from. They sent me to speech class when I was a kid because they told me yins wasn't a word. I don't even know how you spell yins, but we would say things like, yin's gonna walk up the holler to go and see grandma. Yin's coming over for dinner. I mean, yins was the interchangeable word. Everybody used yins. We didn't say y'all, and I still can't say that properly. I sound ridiculous being down in Texas trying to join in and say y'all. They're like, no. No, because the Ozark is like a banjo compared to other Southern accents. So where I come from, it's a small town of 301 people. And every year for a while, my uncle, he would make a yearly trek up to the Arctic Circle, and he would steal the town's population sign. And that's apparently when you go to the Arctic Circle, that's a big thing. You stick it up there. And he would go, he's a world traveler, and he would steal the population sign almost every year. And they really hated him for it. They banned him from the town. So 301 people. My family comprises most of it. And the nearest supermarket's 45 minutes away. We have a Quick Mart there. We have a restaurant called The Restaurant. I'm not making it up. The Restaurant. When you are in high school, you waitress there. And there's the gas station, Quick Mart, a tiny little bank, and the restaurant. And that's it. If you want anything else, if you want more than just a half gallon of milk and a case of beer and some bad hamburger, what you are supposed to do is go to the supermarket 45 minutes away. And in this town, everybody always drove with rifles in their back glass because everybody had gun cases in their trucks or gun racks in their trucks. My grandpa had 3 rifles in the back glass of his truck. We didn't have safes in the Ozarks. We have gun cabinets in the Ozarks. And these gun cabinets take pride of place in the home. They have etched glass. They're beautiful pieces of furniture, and they display your guns in your home. My uncle had one that was handmade for him or my grandfather had one handmade for him by my uncle. So that's the reality in which I grew up. My grandpa would go hunting with my cousins. He would take the boys because we girls could not shut up. We giggled and we talked. Why are you doing this, Grandpa? Why are you doing this? Why is this? Why are you going to shoot that deer? We wouldn't shut up. So I wouldn't take me either. I don't blame him. But what we got to do is hold the legs of whatever. When he'd go raccoon hunting or squirrel hunting or whatever, we got to hold the legs and help skin it and field dress whatever. So I learned real quick what happens when you pull a trigger. You can't unpull it. And we were taught simultaneously firearm education and respect for life. See, in the society in which we live in, we have the societies, what we created in Washington with Jalen Freiberg, that's Frankenstein's monster right there. Because that's a product of society's lack of respect for life. It's a product of society's lack of respect for private property. It's a product of bad parenting, and I don't care if it's politically incorrect to say it, it's the truth. Truth doesn't mean it's truth. So here in the Ozarks, that's how I grew up. I learned respect for life and firearm education. My grandpa taught me how to shoot a rifle, and everything I knew about firearms came from that man. World War II vet, served as a gunner on the USS Alabama. And my mom worked 3 jobs. She was a single mom. And in the summers, I'd live down with my grandparents. And there was one evening that changed my life and changed my perception of guns. It was a late summer evening. I was getting ready to go back up to the city, which was a suburb, and go back to school. And I was sleeping with my little cousin in my grandparents' bedroom. My grandma and grandpa were still up. They were shutting everything down for the night. The window was open. There was a breeze coming through the window. And I was just at that point where I was almost asleep. And that's when I heard something really weird outside. And it sounded, I couldn't tell if it was a cat. I couldn't tell if it was an injured coyote. I had no idea what it was. But it was getting closer to the house. And I sat up and I started listening. My cousin was still asleep in the bed. My grandparents were apparently oblivious to what was happening in the living room. They had a tiny house. And I heard it get closer, and it was getting louder. And then I heard footsteps in my grandparents' gravel drive. Now, they keep their door unlocked. Nobody locks doors down there. And the sound, I could hear this person come up on the porch, and it was somebody in serious distress. Burst through the door and just start screaming. It was my aunt. She had been beaten within an inch of her life by her estranged husband. She had fractures in her face. She was bloody, and she escaped him and ran in her nightclothes through the woods, through a creek, to my grandparents' tiny little 800 square foot house on the side of an abandoned mine in Iron County, Missouri. And my grandmother said, "Oh, we have to call the law. We got to call the law." Well, in rural parts of the country, the law is usually a couple deputies for an entire giant county. And you're lucky if the law can get to you in about 30 to 40 minutes. Average response time for 911 is 20 minutes. Average. I don't know about you, but I don't like that span of time. My aunt had said he's coming after me because apparently after he beat her up, he went to go get a knife to fillet her. And she escaped out the back door. And he screamed at her, "I'm coming to get you. I'm coming for you." And he knew she was going to run to her parents' house. So I'm hearing all of this in my bed. My two elderly grandparents. I'm with my little cousin. And I'm thinking, he's going to kill us because he was well known around town. He had violent temper. And I was terrified. I was about 8 years old. I was terrified. That is a feeling as a child you never want to experience. As an adult, you never want to experience. And then my grandma called the law, and that time my grandpa walked down the hallway. And he had such a fierce determination in every step he took. He had another gun cabinet in their bedroom. So I pretended to be asleep because I learned that if you pretend to be asleep, you get more information. Naturally nosy. And he walked to that gun cabinet, and he got out a rifle. I could hear him getting some ammunition. And then he very slowly, John Wayne style, walked out to the front porch. He sat on that front porch. He loaded that shotgun. He cocked it, and he sat there. And he started swinging back and forth. And that creaky swing and the chain that was jangling with it and that breeze blowing through the window reassured me. And I stopped being afraid. And I realized that no matter what happened, my grandpa had this. You're not going to take on a veteran, I'm sorry. He had this. He's mean. And we later learned that my aunt's estranged husband, in fact, did approach the house because I fell asleep. I drifted off to sleep after that. The authorities did show up. The law showed up 45 minutes after they were called. And my aunt's estranged husband had shown up, and he saw the silhouette of my grandpa on that porch, and he knew he would be armed to the teeth. And he thought better of it. And he drove away. And now he's in jail for life because he committed a number of other crimes. It was a gun that saved my aunt's life. It was a gun that probably saved all of our lives that night. And so whenever I hear people like the Moms Demand Action or Bloomberg or Mayors Against Illegal Guns or Everytown sit here and tell me that firearms are a tool of murder, like hell they are, they saved my life that night. And they saved countless other lives every single day. 2.1 million instances of defensive use with a firearm every year. And a huge percentage of those, according to multiple FBI uniform crime reports, which I researched, put in my book, are women defending against sexual assault and abuse. So I also reject the argument, because my aunt later got armed, I also reject the argument from so-called open-minded anti-gun folks that women are too stupid to carry a firearm. We're just too weak with our limp wrists, and we just can't properly hold it. We'd be better off in the kitchen making sandwiches barefoot now, wouldn't we? That's what I hear whenever they start talking. And I realized after that night I never wanted to live in fear again. And so when I started getting involved in politics, I grew up with rifles. Would you believe that I did not shoot a handgun or own a handgun until 7 years ago? I grew up with rifles. Down there in the country, nobody deals with handgun. Everybody has a rifle. And then after I started getting death threats from being on radio, when I stuck up for Kenneth Gladney, who was beaten in the parking lot of a town hall by some SEIU workers, and we were trying to get attention for that, I had people calling my radio station saying, "We know where your kids are. We got a surprise for you when you come home." That's what did it for me. So I had a little come to Jesus moment after that. I thought, how am I going to continue doing this? Because in my mind, I'm like 6'8", 310 pounds. And in reality, I lie and say I'm 5'7" when I'm just short of it. And I'm about $125. So, if somebody wanted to do something to me, they could. And that's when, and I've been saying this for so long, that's when I discovered the ultimate equalizer, my boomstick. And my husband and I talked about it, and I said, I'm not going to be intimidated. And in fact, the more I thought about it, the more ticked off I got. These grown men trying to intimidate a woman into shutting up because she's just dissenting, because she's speaking truth. So I not only went out and I got my concealed carry, I bought a whole crap ton of firearms. I went and took courses. I took tactical courses, marksmanship courses, 2 years of Krav Maga, situational awareness, surveillance detection, and for the next 2.5 years, I loaded up. And so I don't live in fear anymore. Anyone who dares to threaten my family should be the ones who live in fear. And that's how it ought to be. So this is why I wrote this book, because I was tired of hearing all of this stuff. I have so much in this, seriously, and I'm not saying this because I want to sell you that. I want you to go out and get this book because I want you to shut down people who are trying to deprive you of rights. Gun control's roots are sexist. Gun control's roots are racist. Every federal backing of gun control was from people seeking to deprive others of their rights. The first one was Wounded Knee. Now, unlike Elizabeth Warren, my ancestors are actual documented American Indians who are on both the Dawes and Miller list, and we were forcibly removed, shockingly enough, by Warren's ancestors from Georgia. Who would have thought? We go way back, she and I. So when we talk about the plight of the American Indian, I say, well, who disarmed them? Who disarmed them? It was Andrew Jackson. And he defied a Supreme Court order to do it down in Georgia. It happened. It was a federal gun grab at Wounded Knee. That's how Wounded Knee happened. Look at the Reconstruction era. In my hometown of St. Louis, the Dred Scott decision, the motivating factor behind Dred Scott was firearms. Because Dred Scott couldn't own a firearm, being a freedman, he couldn't count as an American citizen. Roger Taney shamed himself with that legal decision. This is how it always is. And the same people who have pushed gun control then, because they were afraid of free black men and women, free American Indians arming themselves, are the same ones pushing it today, and they use the same arguments. You want to scare a progressive? Tell them you support open carry and concealed carry in urban communities, and you see how fast they melt when they sit here and talk about diversity. That happens. Look at Chicago. Otis McDonald, God bless that man. He's a civil rights hero. That man took on Chicago and he won. And he lived long enough to see the crime rate decrease. Thankful for that. They're natural rights. These aren't civil rights. These aren't rights endowed to you by some man-created council, by the government. These are natural rights that no one can take from you. And that's an important distinction. Very important distinction. And so, you know, in this book that I've written, Hands Off My Gun, I get into all of this, the statistics. You want to know the crime statistics? You want to know what happens when you implement concealed carry? I discuss it. Do you want to know how many women a year use firearms for self-defense? I cite it. I get into all of that. And I'm not backing down, and I don't think that just because what happened, it's a tragedy what happened yesterday with the school shooting, but I am not going to cower because a madman illegally used an inanimate object. No more than I don't drive my car because we have more deaths from drunk driving and vehicular manslaughter every year. We all drive cars. It makes no sense. It is an inanimate object. And I was just tired of arguing with people on radio and on Twitter and on Facebook and everywhere damn else that I've been, on television. I got tired of arguing with Piers Morgan. I got tired of arguing with Van Jones. So I wrote a book about it. And I have this final parting remark. Now, as a woman, we only just got the right to vote in the 20th century. But I'll tell you what, ladies, we've always had the right to bear arms. And they haven't seen nothing yet. If you want to have a male-led patriarchal movement try to deprive us, make us statistics, make us incapable of defending our families, that is your war on women. And when you go after another one of our rights, by God, you're going to get a war by women. Thank you all so much. I'll be downstairs at 2 o'clock signing books. Come see me. I'd love to see you.